First, Brandon, as we always do, want to start with a bit of an open segment. I guess the hot topic right now is the championship weekend at Phoenix and the NASCAR playoff system. And this was what I think, Brandon, you might have predicted that this was going to happen here. It just seems like Joey Logano, it's the even year magic, if you will, and the most controversial outcome possible among a lot of people in the fan base. Driver that was at one point, I think, as low as 17th in the season-long standings, and by any metric you want to throw out there, would be ranked, between, I think, 11th or 14th in a full season picture, would not have even made the original 12-driver chase in a straight-up points battle. But he got hot at the right time, take nothing away from him, did everything he needed to do to play the system.
Yeah.
And he ends up with his third NASCAR Cup Series championship, second in 3 years, and the third in a row as well for Team Penske. Of course, his championships bookend Ryan Blaney's, or sandwich, I guess I should say, his 2023 championship last year. So, of course, Brandon, I just want to give you a chance first and foremost. I know I was on the wrap-up show again with Matthew Bro yesterday. We got to talk a little bit about the immediate reaction to Logano's win. But what are your thoughts on how the Cup Series race played out? And do you feel like, I mean, we've all seen the reaction on social media of the last 24 hours or so. Is this the breaking point? Is this the boiling point for a lot of fans with this system? Even if they don't want to go to a full season once again, is this the final definitive circumstance that shows us that something needs to change with how we crown our champions?
Ben, directly from, I was telling you, from the majority of opinions that I've seen all across the internet. And you know how our opinions go. They usually are because of the social circle that we've built for ourselves, through your social media accounts, Twitter, X, for example. You're going to get, the idea is you're going to get a majority of responses and echo around you that sort of agrees with what you've already thought. Typically, it's going to surround you with things like that. Well, I've tried to go outside of that circle and try to find what the majority of NASCAR fans, media, etc., are thinking. Everywhere I turn, this seems to be the last straw. Again, we've had multiple last straws, but this seems to be another case of, when are we going to fix this? When are we going to fix this format? It's been way too long. Brian France concocted this back when he wanted to overtake the NFL in fall ratings. It's never going to happen. It didn't happen then. The championship race is still, although I love the race, it's still just another race. You can't make it more than what it already is. It's just another race. You have 4 people that are competing for a championship when you get down to it, but the way they got there was a little questionable, but they all did what they had to do inside these parameters to get there, and that they're all well deserving to get there. And the champion happy-go-lucky his way all the way to the end. It was, if there had been just a different weight in Alex Bowman's car back at Vegas, back at the Roval, right? And then Logano's clutch win at Vegas. But the Roval, we would be talking about a much different thing right now. But before I say any more, I'm not talking bad about Joey Logano. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. He's a well-deserving champion. Now, it just feels off when we put his name next to Darrell Waltrip and Cale Yarborough and et cetera, of guys that have won 3 championships. It just feels off. And that seems like the most conservative opinion of NASCAR right now whenever you look at some of the established voices in the sport that are telling us their opinions. But I mean, we're all looking at the same race. We're all looking at the same year-long championship. Like that just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, well, and again, let's be completely fair here. It's not Joey's fault. And Denny Hamlin said it on Action Sacramento. It's not their fault that they are elite at figuring out how to maximize this system to their advantage. They went out, they did what they needed to do in the regular season. They won a race, and that gets 16 drivers in, or most of the 16 driver field, there's usually room for a couple to point their way in. Logano wins that race, probably wouldn't have even, in fact, not even probably, I don't think he would have made it in without that win. Under any sort of postseason format that we've had here since 2004. That one win gets him into the round of 16. He wins Atlanta. He almost gets eliminated in the round of 12. In fact, he does get eliminated in the round of 12. Alex Bowman's disqualification brings him back in. He wins the opening race, the round of 8, gets 2 full weeks to prepare for Phoenix. Penske maximizes that, and he's your 2024 NASCAR Cup Series champion, holding off his teammate Ryan Blaney, who was trying to defend it. And again, in complete fairness, 36 wins now for Joey Logano. That puts him level 24th all time with his former longtime teammate at Penske, Brad Keselowski. But again, Keselowski only has 1 championship to his name. You look above him on this list here, you have the Mark Martins and Junior Johnsons and Denny Hamlins of the world. I would say the 3 best drivers to never win a championship at all. But other 3-time champions just that stand out to me here. Lee Petty had 54 wins. Of course, Brandon, you mentioned Cale Yarborough, who won 3 straight. And again, we're still looking for some. I mean, Jimmy Johnson's streak was remarkable. I know we'll never see that again. I don't know if we'll ever see 3 in a row again with what Cale Yarborough did, with how much parity we have in this elimination era. Ryan Blaney came up just short going back-to-back again. But Yarborough is a 3-time champion. Of course, we all know how legendary he is with his 83 wins. Darrell Waltrip likewise with 84. And I'm with you. I was asked yesterday on Wrap-Up, is Penske the new dynasty? And I said, I'd never thought about it that way. But I guess when you look at it on paper, if you have 3 consecutive championships to your name as a team, I can't think of any.
That's the beginnings of it anyway, if you're going to become a dynasty. At least of the Gen 7 era.
Yeah, they are still the only team in the Gen 7 next gen era that's won a Cup Series championship. So I guess by definition, like I said, you win 3 in a row in any sport, I think you have a claim to a dynasty.
That's fair.
Or even if you're in contention, like, the Golden State Warriors, I think, were considered a dynasty, right? They never three-peated, but they went to 5 straight NBA finals. Again, it's I don't think 3 in a row is a necessity, but I think anybody that does get 3 in a row, I don't think there's very many people arguing against that being a dynasty of some sort in sports. And yet, like I said last night, that's not the first word that comes to mind. I don't view Team Penske as like, oh, it's Penske, and it's like Red Bull and Formula One the last couple of years. Like, they are on another level, and then it's everybody else. I haven't viewed Team Penske that way.
Yeah, not quite.
Yeah, you would view them that way in terms of this system that we have now and how they're able to maximize it to their advantage in this next gen era. I will certainly grant them that. More power to them for what they've done. And also, and by the way, and this is no hate against Matt Weaver ever. I think it was a very fair question. I appreciate Matt getting Joey's response on the record, but Joey Logano saying, it, of course, are the championships, I like this format. I like, what it forces us as drivers to do to perform. I don't want to see somebody wrap up a championship early. I mean, the man's won 3 titles under this format. Of course he's going to defend. Of course he's going to defend the system. What do you expect him to get up there and say? Nah, they're right. It doesn't feel right. My championships are illegit. Like,
if you want to hear the unbiased opinion about it, you're asking the actual worst person in the paddock.
Yeah,
other than Joey Logano. That's why they didn't want him to be reinstated back into the playoffs, because they know how great they are at performing under pressure and just having just the outright fortune that you need in those Game 7 moments, when it's Game 4 and Game 5.
Yeah, but that's exactly it. But again, people talk about the Game 7 moments here. I think NASCAR Man history, again, this is why these comparisons don't work. NASCAR Man used the example of, why do fans not like the system? And if you had to make a stretch for the NFL, it would be like the Chiefs winning their wild card playoff game and then getting to take the divisional and conference championship games off because they're straight in the Super Bowl. Like, that's essentially what Joey Logano did. He won the what would be not the penultimate or anti-penultimate. What's the 4th one after that? I'm sure there's a word for that, not coming to mind right now. But the 4th to last race of the year, he won that race. That locks him in. He gets to literally, all he has to do is start the next 2 races, right? I guess you have to be full-time to maintain your playoff eligibility. So
he won the quarterfinals. He gets 2 buys. And
that's exactly it. But again, you can't, and I said this backstage to you and Joe, Brandon, it's not even comparing apples and oranges, because at least apples and oranges are both fruits, right? Like that would be comparing NASCAR to Formula One or NASCAR to IndyCar.
Right.
You try comparing NASCAR to the NFL or NASCAR to the NBA or NASCAR to Major League Baseball or the NHL or whatever. Like that to me is like comparing apples to chocolate chip pancakes. Like, okay, they're both foods of some sort. They're both sporting, uh, you know, they both are organizations that sanction a professional sport, but they're not in any way, shape, or form comparable in terms of how you crown who the best competitor is or who the best team is over the course of a year. Because in those sports, stick and ball sports, you only have two teams sharing the field at one time. In NASCAR, in motor racing, it's unique in the element that yes, you do have teams, and then you even have teammates within single organizations and teams in a different definition. But the drivers as individuals and the cars as individuals are out there racing each other for a scale of points that are awarded based on how they finish. You don't need a system like this. I understand why people want a system like this, why it provides some entertainment, but it is not a necessity. It is objectively not a necessity to crown your champion in this sport. And again, I think when you look at the fan reaction here, the poll from Jeff Gluck, Jeff always has his was it a good race poll, and I'm actually a little surprised here. I didn't think by Phoenix standards it was that bad of a race, but it's still, as of right now, 25,000 plus votes in, 58.5% say it was not a good race. Only 41.5% say it was.
I enjoyed every stage of it. I mean, honestly.
Sure, that's fair. Again, I think I still would prefer Homestead as the finale, but I think by Phoenix standards, I thought it was a pretty decent showing there, especially the last stage. I mean, Ryan Blaney was on a hard charge. Like
he was the faster car.
It was a tense final 10 laps if you're a Penske fan, no doubt. But Jeff followed it up with a part two. What is your preferred NASCAR playoff format? He has three options here: elimination, current, original chase, 10 races, full season, 36 races. As of right now, 7:43 p.m., the poll's been open for almost exactly 12 hours. He opened it at 7:50 a.m. Eastern time this morning. 23,364 votes. 15.9% say they prefer the elimination style current system that we have. 45.5% want to return to the original chase. 38.6% say give me a full season championship format.
Yep.
But again, I don't know. I was told that these are just, maybe this is election interference of some sort with bots on Twitter with these 38.6% here. I was told that we're on our own. Like we don't have a, we need to get to some sort of group or something because it's not going anywhere. And this gives the fans what they want here. I don't know. It seems to me 84.1% of the fan base wants something different here.
Yeah, that's really what bothers me about it, Ben. Like I'm not truly, bothered in life. I'm having it's a good life. But I mean, when it comes to NASCAR, it bothers me because like how can people not see that this is a big chunk of your fan base? Well, you can see it. No, you're lying. You can see it. You're choosing not to react to it. There's dollars and cents behind your opinions. That's what's going on here. I mean, your preferred NASCAR playoff format, that is up to almost 24,000 votes on that at the moment. Almost 26,000 on was Phoenix a good race. So a little bit more on, it's a little bit easier to answer whether you think that was a good race or not. But when you get the three-parter of your preferred chase format, and also, bless him, David Land's already got me on the not one to call it playoffs because I've been accepting that, and then once I start thinking about it again, I lose a few brain cells and why are we calling it playoffs? You don't play racing, you race racing. It's an apple to a steak dinner. You don't compare them.
Yeah,
and you don't name them after each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah, what are we doing? That's a good question here. And again, it's interesting having this split three ways here because, quite frankly, I'm willing to negotiate at this point. I will take, like I always say, if I could choose, if I were, as Ricky Craven said last week, king for a day, of course I would. I think the Latford system, is actually great because there's 5 points per position up at the front, and then it goes down to 4, and then it scales to 3. I think it's a brilliant system. That we didn't need to move away from. And again, people bring up stage points and everything. I fundamentally believe that the race winner should be the one who scores the most points, takes the most points out of the weekend. But again, that's getting into completely different discussion here, strictly on the championship format. Of course, if I could snap my fingers, I'd go back to a full season. But I can respect what Tony Stewart did in 2011, going on that run when he barely got in to the chase in that epic battle with Carl Edwards. At least that's a 10-race sample size. And you can say, well, okay, these are the 12 best drivers over the first 26 races, and these are the 12 that we're going to have sprint to the finish here, fight for a championship. But it's still going to be 10 whole races worth of a sample size here to crown our champion. And again, I don't love that. Call me a Winston Cup purist in that regard, but I will take that in a heartbeat over the current elimination style bracket that we have now. Because I think this sport is simply too chaotic and unpredictable for a one race winner take all championship format, regardless of how you get there. And again, it's nothing against Joey Logano. He did everything he needed to do and had every opportunity that everybody else in the field had as well. But again, what is it? I think it's a 17.1 average finish. And by the way, that was brought up on the morning drive this morning too, right? People saying, average finish doesn't matter. Why is that all of a sudden the stat that everybody comes back to? I don't know. I feel like average finish is the best stat to indicate what kind of season.
With all due respect, that is such a blind response. I truly don't get it. I really don't. Typically average finish and wins and top fives and top tens, when you put all that together, that's typically in the history of the sport what we've looked at. When we see our champion, you go in their stat sheet and go, yeah, it adds up. Typically, when you go back through the record books, you see champions, and you can see through the numbers why they were the champion. I mean, even through some of the chase format, it ended up working in the right way until you got to 2014, that is, and it got a little squirrely at times, a little questionable. But the reason why it's rearing its ugly head right now is because this is the most obvious since then that it really is. It's presenting itself like, here I am. Here's your 16th seed that made it to the champion. That is now your champion. Like one of these is not like the other, and finally it happened. And some of us were like almost wanting this to happen at some point, so we could go, aha, see, look, there it is. And we're still in the same spot. I hope they do something about it. This would be the year to do it. Do something about it.
Perfect time with the new media partners coming. I guess they're doing something's probably going to be the in-season tournament. I don't know if they.
Which I'm excited for too. I am.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I know Matthew Owens and I had that debate earlier this year, but I'm just kind of like, I don't think that's the straw. That doesn't seem to me like the straw that's going to break the camel's back, right? Like if you've put up with all of this other stuff, I'm just, at least for me, I have the mentality that I'm like, okay, have your goofy little $1 million in-season tournament for whatever.
Have your Emirates Cup. I mean, in-season tournament.
Yeah, that's gonna be what it'll be, and we'll crown a $1 million winner from that. And then $1 million doesn't go nearly as far as it used to either. But
that gets you two tires.
Yeah,
deflated. Yeah. You have to inflate them.
Yeah, honestly though, I mean, I remember when Clint Boyer was on that episode of Duck Dynasty, and Willie was asking Clint like, how much does it take to sponsor a Cup car, and he said $500,000, and he was like, what is that, like for a year or for like how many races? And he said per race. And that was over 10 years ago. So I'm sure it's only continued to skyrocket from there.
Yeah, for sure.
People always bring up, I'm just looking up 2003 here, because Brandon, I know you brought up wins as well. And again, to answer the question, why does average finish matter here? Just looking at the 2003 standings, Jeff Burton finished 12th the points that year with an average finish of 17.2. So again, not much unlike where Joey's average finish was this year. And again, I know Joey even said it to his credit in the post-race press conference, and we'll reference these hypotheticals later on here on the show when we get into Truck Series especially. But, there is some truth to it. They go out and they race according to the system that we have, right? Like you don't get the Hail Melon Ross Chastain move or what we saw the shenanigans in Martinsville last week. You don't get that in a full season points deal, right? So
I heard someone call Doug Rice this afternoon and call it a half melon.
Yeah.
Something like that. That was genius.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. But again, of course, the racing would be slightly different. Of course, it's not an exact science here, because you would give some points to drivers here, take some points away. But I still think average finish is, exactly that. It's, your average over the course of the full year. I think it's the best indicator. And I think Jeff Burton's 2003 season proves that, yeah, that's a 17th place average finish. That's probably going to place you, honestly, anywhere between 10th and 17th or 18th in the standings, depending on, the strength of your opposition or whatever. But bringing up wins, people maybe say, Ryan Newman won 8 races in 2003. How is he not the champion after a season like that when Matt Kenseth only wins 1? But you know what the difference is? You know what Ryan Newman's average finish in 2003 was? 13.9. Matt Kenseth's was 10.3. It also happened to be the best in the series that year. And that is why Matt Kenseth won the championship in 2003 over Ryan Newman. So again, you saying average finish doesn't matter, doesn't mean anything. I think when you look at the season as a whole, which is what over a third of NASCAR fans are saying they want to be the indicator for how we crown our champions, that is the best statistics to throw out there in terms of who had the best overall season.
And if you want someone to blame for all of this mess, look no further than Matthew Roy Kenseth. We'll just point our fingers at him.
Yeah, it's that they call it the Matt Kenseth rule, right?
Yeah.
But again, that was the end of an era with Winston, no longer being the entitlement sponsor, and Nextel coming in, and again, I'll take that in a heartbeat over the insanity that we have now. I think we drifted too far in one direction. I can compromise and say, okay, you don't want a full season, that's fine. But I don't know, man. I mean, I think you're even seeing, I mentioned Seth Eves last week, friend of the show. You are even seeing the playoff loyalists start to say, okay, what happened in Martinsville is not a good look. A guy with 17th place average finish, being the champion of the full season, in the record books, maybe we need to look at some tweaks at the very least to try to, find a better, again, indicator or representation of what a champion of this sport should be. And again, that's not to say it's Joey Logano's fault, but it's a reality when you look at his full season performance.
We can't have the majority of the season be an exhibition event, and then we can't keep deciding our champion with one race. That's some of the, to me, that's some of the non-negotiables in this sort of compromise. As long as we can get some of those out of the way somehow. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if you keep stage racing in, but you've got to change some of these settings so you don't get, I hate to say it, crappy champions like this. He's not a crappy champion. Don't get me wrong. He deserves this. He figured out how to do it, and he's a future Hall of Famer. He's a deserving 3-time champion, but it's a crappy way to decide your champion, and everyone around the world knows it because they don't do things like that. No one else but you does it like that. And the argument is, oh well, it's making its way over to V8 supercars. It's the virus is spreading. It's making its way to other forms of motorsport. Is that really for the better? Or are we really gonna just it's spreading, so it must be good?
Yeah, I don't know. I think again, you only need to take a look at, and I know I get it. Social media, Twitter especially, is not real life. I understand that. Definitely understand that. But there is a large enough sample size of real people who are not bots. Hello, I'm right here. Real person. There's a large enough sample size of those people to let you know, at the very least, there's a faction of fans out there that are very vocal about this and very passionate about it. And like I said, I don't want to walk away from this sport, because that's the other argument, right? If you don't like it, don't watch it. Go watch something else. Like,
yeah, I'm not walking away.
Yeah, I'm not walking away. And I know what I said last week, and I think there is some truth to it. I'm going to try to look at these, try to enjoy the races on an individual level. It gets very hard this time of year when the cut line is constantly on the NBC pylon, and you're constantly hearing about that. I mean, it gets almost impossible this time of year, of course, but early in the season, the first 2/3 of the season at least, try to look at these races as individual races. And I think Mark Urban, the photographer, good follow on social media as well, I think he was even saying, I'm going to look at it in a vacuum and just kind of forget that they crown a champion here because I'm fed up with this. And again, I don't think that comes from a place of hatred for the sport or wanting to see the sport fail. We all want to see the sport succeed. We just disagree on how to get there and the best way to draw new fans in, as well as keeping the legacy fans engaged, not pushing them away. And again, I don't think it's any coincidence that the boom period for this sport really started to have the first hints of a decline right as this new system was introduced, right as and then it was kind of escalated with the new elimination format in the turn of the mid 2010s. Just again, I think you can take a poll of current NASCAR fans, but I think a lot of former NASCAR fans aren't answering the Jeff Gluck poll because they don't stay up to date with the sport anymore, probably for similar reasons. They've already walked away. I'm not going to be one of those fans that walks away. As frustrated as I get sometimes, as much as I feel like maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back, I still love racing at its core. I don't want to completely give up on it. I want what's best for the sport.
Yeah.
But I think at some point, just a minute, Brett, just at some point, the leadership and the executives, and dare I say some of the media members, particularly over at SiriusXM, you have to at the very least acknowledge that there is a large percentage, very vocal percentage of this fan base that feels differently, that I think has a voice that deserves to be heard. And if they're not feeling heard right now, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I think one of the voices at SiriusXM said, "Fine." So at least we're tolerated. So that's the most we've been acknowledged of our existence. So
well, it's always that. Yeah, it's always that. That's fine, but right? Like that's always how it. And again, and I want to make this clear too. Pete Pistone in particular, he's been at SiriusXM for a while, been in the sport for much longer than I have been, and he's accomplished a lot more than I could ever hope to or dream to even accomplish. Right? Got plenty of respect for him, but I had somebody message me this morning. Matthew Owens was he listens to the morning drive regularly. I didn't this morning, but he sent me a few sound bites, and he said, honestly, Ben, why don't you call in? At some point, sometimes they view Twitter or X as just this echo chamber of social media. If you want to actually have a conversation, call in. And I was just very honest, and I said, and I said it, when I made that response video last year, when my side is being told it's a non-starter for having a conversation in modern day NASCAR, get to a group, you're on your own, which clearly I think this poll shows that that's not true. Right. But when that's what I'm being told, what good is it do for me to call in to SiriusXM to try to have that conversation? Why should I expect anything different in terms of a response from the people I'm calling into? I feel like if I tried to call in, then I would it would be probably a tense, angry back and forth, and everybody would leave the conversation not happy. And I know I'm not going to change Pete Pistone's mind, and I think Pete Pistone would know he's not going to change my mind. But I'm at least willing and open to having that conversation if that same grace is extended from the other side. And from what I hear listening to that show, I'm just not convinced it would be. So that's why I haven't called in. If I thought maybe there'd be an opportunity there, maybe I do something differently. But I don't see how it values anybody's time, for somebody like me to call in there, because I don't think very much would be accomplished. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality.
Yeah. I mean, the end of this for me is I still love this sport, loyal to it. I'm not going to leave it no matter what happens here. If it could get worse, it could get much worse, and I would probably still be here because I see what she once was. I see what she could be. I see the great racing she's had this year and in the past couple of years with this Gen 7 car. And I love the talent that's in it. I would like some of the younger talent to learn a thing or two as we keep going, as we've talked several weekends about. But there's still so much good there, and I've just something will change for the better eventually. Just got to keep thinking that.
Yeah, well, but also we got to be careful, Brandon, because we do have a couple of teams that are literally suing the sport right now over a charter agreement here. So
And you know what? That might actually be for the better. We'll have to see.
long term potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes out of this, but yeah, it's also a good reminder. As much as you may think this is rock bottom, NASCAR fans, I assure you, it could be worse. Maybe it's going to get worse, but I hope that we come out of the other side, at least for the better. And
at least there will still be great racing. We might draw our champion out of a hat, but at least there was good racing.
Yeah, and there will always be stock car racing in this country. Whether it's full body, late model racing, or ARCA. Obviously, I know ARCA's been acquired by NASCAR now, but you've seen it with IndyCar, with open wheel racing, right? They were sanctioned by AAA and USAC and CART and Champ Car and the IRL, now the IndyCar series we know today, and of course they've unified and brought all their records together. But they're not like NASCAR. They haven't always been under one sanctioning body throughout all of their history. Maybe there's a future where there's some sort of split down the road, or owners try to organize or boycott or whatever. We've seen that happen a couple times in our sports history. It hasn't gotten very far, but there will always be racing for us to enjoy in this country. That I have no doubt. And again, I hope that the path towards this sport's future is not as bumpy as it may seem like it is right now. But again, that's not my concern. I have plenty of concerns about NASCAR. What stock car racing completely going away in this country is not one of them. I think there's always going to be something for race fans to enjoy.